Hey everyone! In this video, I am building a React app that displays country data from the REST countries API. I will show how to add search and filter features, style everything with Tailwind CSS and DaisyUI, and even keep the scroll position when navigating between pages. So let's get started. So let's open our terminal and write npm create vid at latest, and I will write dot. So it will create a brand new React project using vid, which is a super fast build tool for modern web apps. And in the end, I write dot so that no extra folders will be created. Everything will be installed inside this folder. So let's press enter and let's select a framework, which will be React. Then let's choose JavaScript. Here I will say no and no again. And now let's write npm install and press enter. Okay, now it's time to connect Tailwind CSS to our project. So here let's click get started. And since we use vid, we're in the right place, we can skip the first part because we have done it. We have already done it. And now let's copy this command and paste it in our terminal. Okay. Now we need to configure the vid plugin, so let's copy this, and inside vid.config.js, let's paste this import right here, and inside plugins array, let's also use Tailwind CSS. So let's save this file, and now we need to add an import to our CSS file that imports Tailwind CSS. So inside source folder, we can find a file called index.css. We can remove everything and paste this Tailwind CSS. Okay, so now it's time to add DaisyUI, and DaisyUI makes Tailwind apps look great fast, and it gives us pre-built themes and components using Tailwind classes. Okay, here let's click how to use, and we need to install DaisyUI as a node package. So since here I use npm, I just need to copy this and paste it in my terminal. So let's paste it. Okay. And now we need to add DaisyUI to our CSS file. So let's copy this plugin and paste it right here. So let's save this file. Okay. And now the last but not least, let's install Axios, since it is a lightweight HTTP client used to fetch data from APIs. And in this project, we're going to work with REST countries API. And then let's also install React Router DOM. It is the official React library for page routing and navigation. So let's install them. Great. Now I'm going to delete app.css and assets folder because we don't need it in this case. And let's close our terminal. And at the same time, let's go to app.g6 and we need to remove this boilerplate code. Okay. So this is how it looks right now, and now I'm going to copy this text, and inside index.html I want to change this default title to this text. Okay, so now let's open our terminal again and let's clear it first, and now we are ready to start our application. So let's say npm run dev and let's open this link. So this is how it looks, and our background color is dark thanks to the fact that we use DaisyUI. It depends on your browser theme. Since my browser theme is dark, I see this color. If it was light, I would see a light color. And now we can come to index.css and do the following. Let's say that we want to come to our body tag, and let's say that we want to apply the background color to our body, and let's say that it will be base 200. Base means that it will be based on your theme. So if you use light theme, it will be based on that. And if you use dark theme, it will be based on that. And now the color will change a little. So now I will save this file. And as you can see, the color changed a little. And it changed only here. Okay. And to make it this color everywhere, so let's say that min height will be screen. Okay, now we see this color everywhere. Okay, so now I'm going to close our tabs that we don't need, and now let's work with our application. Okay, and now what I suggest to do is that let's wrap the entire application with router so that we will enable navigation. But first of all, for that, we need to do some imports. So let's import browser router. as router, and let's also import routes and route. So we needed to enable routing between pages. Okay, and now let's remove all of this. And here we want to return router. So right now we are wrapping the entire app with router to enable navigation. And now we can define route paths, but above our route paths, we want to have our navbar, which we haven't created yet, but we're gonna create it very soon. And then after navbar, we want to define our routes. So let's say that we want to define our routes, and for now we can accept it, but we will not have footer, and we will not have these two routes. So here we have our route, which is default home route. And here we're going to have a page, which will be called home. And then we're going to have one more route path, which will be dynamic. So let's say route. And when it comes to path, it will be dynamic. So here, let's say /country/ and name. So this part will be dynamic. And when it comes to the element, let's say that here we want to render country details. Okay, so it will be dynamic route for each country. Great. But first of all, let me introduce this REST countries API to you so that you will have a better understanding of what you will have when you work with this API. So now we can come to endpoints and click all. And as you can see, we must specify the fields. You need up to 10 fields when calling the all endpoints. Otherwise, we will get a bad request response. And then we can search by country name. As you can see, this is how it's going to look. Then by full name, by code, by list of codes, currency, and so on. Okay, this is how it's going to look. Okay, but first of all, before saving this file, let's create this navbar component and these pages. So inside source folder, let's create a folder called components. And here I want to have navbar component. Okay, and inside source folder, we can create a folder for pages. And here let's create a home page. Okay, and country details page. Okay. So now let's save this file and see what we're gonna have. As you can see, looks like we have an error. It is because navbar isn't defined. Okay, so we need to import, first of all, navbar, and then home, of course. Yes, we shouldn't forget to do it, and let's do it manually. So let's import home from pages home and country details. So now let's save this file. And as you can see here at the top, we have navbar, and on the home page, we have this home component. Okay, now let's work with our navbar component. And here we can say that we want to apply the following classes, and we can use a class which comes from DaisyUI, which is called navbar. So now if we hover over, as you can see that it comes from DaisyUI, and you can see all the styles that are used here. So now I'm gonna save this file, and as you can see here we have some space and some padding because DaisyUI already handles that. Okay, so here let's say that background color will be base 100, and we can give some shadow which will be medium. Okay, it looks nice. And then let's say that here we want to have one more div which will be our container. So let's say that it will be container. And if we hover over, as you can see that it is from Tailwind CSS, and as you can see that it is responsive. And then let's say that we want to center our container horizontally, so we can apply this class. Great. And then we can create a tag. So let's say that it will be a tag, and it will be for Country Explorer. So the text will be like this. And then I'm going to add some icon. So this is the icon that I want to use, and let's give some classes. So let's say that text will be 2XL and font will be bold. So let's save this file, and this is how it looks. And also there is one more class which is called tracking tight. And now if I save this file, as you can see, the space between the letters became smaller. So now it looks tighter, I would say. So that's it for our navbar. Okay. And now let's work with our home component. So let's open it. And here let's define some states that we need. So first of all, let's create a state for countries. So let's say countries, set countries, and by default it will be an empty string. And let's import use state from React. So we needed to store all countries. Then let's create a state for our search term. So let's say search term. By default it will be an empty string. Then for our region, we can also say that it will be an empty string. So our region, we need it so that here we will have our region, like if it is Europe, Asia, or Africa. So we will be able to select it. So that's why we need it. Okay, and now let's say that this div will be our container. Again, it will be our container. Let's center it horizontally by saying mx will be auto, and we can give some padding, which will be 4. Then inside this div, we want to have our search bar and filter select components. So first of all, let's say that we want to have a div here, and let's say that it will be flex direction will be column, and on medium screens and high flex will be row, and then it will be justify between, and gap will be 4, and margin bottom will be 6. Okay, so as I have said, here we will have 2 components, search bar and filter select. So now let's create those components. Here let's create search bar. Okay, and filter select component. Great. Now inside home.jsx, let's render them. Here let's say search bar and filter select. Okay, so here they are. And now let's work with search bar component. And first of all, we can pass to our search bar our search term. So let's say that search term will be equal to search term, and then a function to be able to set that search term. So let's say set search term will be equal to set search term. Inside search bar component, let's get access to our set search term function and to our search term state. Okay, great. And here let's say that instead of this div, here we want to have only input. Okay, and type will be text. And when it comes to the placeholder, let's see that it will be search for a country. Value will be search term. And on change, we can get access to this event object, and we can say set search term to whatever we type. So that's why we say event.target.value. So in this case, target is our input and value is what we type inside that input. So we want to set search term to be equal to whatever we type. And now we can add some styles to this input. So let's say that here we want to say class name, and let's say that it will be input. It is a class from DaisyUI, as you can see. And then let's say that width will be full, and on medium screens and higher, width will be 96, and we can give some shadow, which will be small. So let's save this file. And as you can see, this is how it looks. It looks really, really nice. But at the same time, when I select this input, as you can see, we have this white border. But maybe you don't want to have that. But I want to have it, but at the same time, I want it to be green. So that's why I say success. Okay. And if we hover over, as you can see, it is from DaisyUI. So let's save this file. And as you can see now, it is green and it looks really, really nice. And I think that it is visually appealing. Okay. So that's it for our search bar. Now let's work with our filter select component. Filter select should accept region and set region from home component. So let's say that here we want to pass region. So let's say region will be equal to region, and set region will be equal to set region. So let's accept it. Okay. And here we need to have our regions. So let's say const regions will be equal to these regions: Africa, Americas, Asia, Europe, and Oceania. And instead of this div, we want to have a select tag. Okay. Here, let's say that value will be equal to region, and on change, we want to update selected region. Okay. Here, let's say that by default, value will be an empty string. And here we can say that text will be filtered by region. And then we can loop through options. Okay. We can loop through each region name. So here let's say regions.map region, and here let's say that we want to have option. Each option should have a key and its own value. Okay, so that's how it should be. Here we just display our region name. So let's save this file, and as you can see here we have region and we have this default styling, but we're gonna deal with it using DaisyUI. So here let's say that we want to apply this class, which will be select. Okay, and then let's say that width will be full. On medium screens and higher, width will be 60, and we can give some shadow, which will be small. So let's save it, and now this is how it looks. It looks really nice, but at the same time looks like we have something wrong. Okay, it is because we need to have our value and region right here. Okay, so let's save it. Great, now it looks much better. And at the same time we can also make it to be green. For that we just need to say select dash success. Okay, and now this is how it looks. So that's it for our FilterSelect component. So now inside home.jsx we can say that we can create useEffect hook, which will fetch all countries when component mounts. So for that, let's create useEffect hook. Okay, and when it comes to the dependency array, it should be empty because we want to fetch all countries when component just mounts. Okay, and here let's say that we want to use Axios, but first of all let's import Axios from Axios, which is an HTTP client for API requests. And now let's say Axios.get method, and here we need to provide our URL. So this is how the URL looks like, and as you can see, when it comes to fields, here we have name, flags, region, capital, population, and this CC83. So I think that you all understand what these fields mean, but when it comes to this field, it is for like a shortcut of a country, okay? Like 3 letters. So it means that we just want to get data from REST countries API, okay? And then let's say .then, here let's say that we want to have response, and let's say that we want to say set countries to be equal to this response.data, and in case of some errors, we can say catch error, and we can log error if there are some errors, okay? And before saving this file, let's take these countries and let's say console.log countries, so that we will see what we will get from this request. Okay, so let's save this file and let's open our DevTools. And as you can see, now we have an array and it is 250. And here we have our countries. Okay, so as you can see, CCA3 stands for this kind of letters. So for example, here we have France, its capital is Paris, shortcut will be this. And then when it comes to flags, as you can see, we have images in PNG and in SVG. Then when it comes to this name object, here we have common, then native name, official, population, region, and so on. So this is the data that we're going to work with, and we're going to display it in a beautiful way with all these data. Okay, so that's it. So now for each country, we should create a country card. Okay, so for that, we need to create a separate component. So let's say that we want to create a component. Let's call it CountryCard. Okay, and inside home.jsx, we can do the following. After this FilterSelect, let's create a div. I mean, under this div, which contains SearchBar and FilterSelect, we can create a new div, and inside this div, we can map our countries array. So let's say countries.map, and here let's say country. Then we want to render our newly created country card component. And since we have mapping, let's say that each child should have a unique key. And as you remember, in this case, we can use this shortcut for a country, which is length is 3. And then we can pass the whole country object to this component. Oops, here let's say country. Okay. So now to this div, we can apply the following styles. Let's say that it will be flex will be wrap, and justify will be center, and gap between countries will be 6. So now if I save this file, as you can see, now we have a lot of country cards. So now let's go to CountryCard component and work with it. So here let's get access to our country object, and to this div let's apply the following styles. Let's say that it will be card, it is a class from DaisyUI, as you can see, and then let's say that width will be 86, for example, background color will be base 100, we can give some shadow which will be XL, and when we hover we can say that shadow will be 2XL. So it will be our card container, and then we can show the image, the country flag image URL. For that we can use a tag which is figure, and here let's say that we want to have our image. When it comes to source, let's say country.flags.svg. We want to have svg, and for the alternative option we can say country.name.common. Okay, and we can give some styles. Let's say that it will be height will be 44 and width will be full. So now let's save this file, and as you can see we have flags of these countries. Okay, right now select doesn't work and we see all countries. Okay, so under this figure tag, let's say that we want to have card content. So let's create a div, and to this div we can immediately see that it will be card body. Again, it is a class from DaisyUI, and let's create h2 tag, and to this h2 tag we can apply the following styles. Let's say that it will be card title, a class from DaisyUI, then text will be large and font will be bold. And here we want to display country's name. So let's say country.name.common. Then we can display population. So let's use a p tag, and here we can say population colon, and here we want to display population as I have said. So let's say country.population, and we can use this method which is to locate string. So we want it to be formatted so that we will have commas. Okay, I will show you the difference. And we can also show the region of this country and the capital. So when it comes to capital, we can do it like this. We want to use a p tag, and here let's see capital colon, and here we want to say country.capital. So if there is a capital, we want to get the access to the first one. Okay, so if there is capital, we just want to show the first capital if it is available. Okay, because there are some countries which have more than one capital. Great. So let's save this file, and we have an error. So here we have to locate string isn't a function, because here I need to say to local string. Okay, so let's save this file, and this is how it looks. Great. So here we have population. So here if I remove this function, let's see what we will have. So let's see. As you can see, we don't have any commas. It isn't formatted. But if we want it to be formatted and look like this, we can use this function. Okay, and under this div we can create another div. So here let's say that we will have a div, and here we just want to display our button, which will be details. So when we click it, we will get additional info about a particular country that we are interested in. So to this div, let's say that it will be card actions. It is a class from DaisyUI. Okay, the name is self-explanatory, card actions, and we can align button to the right. So let's say justify and here we want to have a link component from React Router DOM, and inside this link we want to have a button, and let's say that it will be details. We can apply some styles to it. It will be, let's say that it will be button color will be primary, and button size will be small. And when it comes to this link, so when we click it, it should lead to this path. It will be /country/country.name.common. So let's save this file. And as you can see, now we have this details button, and looks like it doesn't look cool because we need to have this div inside this div, which is cart body. Okay, so let's put it here. And now it looks much better. So let's see it in full size. Okay, this is how it looks. And for example, let's click Nigeria. And as you can see, we are here. We are on the country details page. Okay, it looks really nice. Okay, so that's it for our country card. And now inside home.j6, we can implement functionality for filtering countries based on search and region. Okay, so for that, here let's create a variable called filtered countries. Oops, let's see, filtered countries will be equal to, and here let's say that we want to filter our countries. So we want to filter our countries using the name, which we're gonna type here. Okay, so as you can see, we have return country.name.common to lowercase. We want to have them in lowercase, and then we make sure that it includes search term to lowercase. So for example, if we have France, and if I type, for example, FR, we should get France. This part is responsible for that. Okay, so here we say if any country inside countries array includes search term to lowercase, if it includes even some part of it, we just want to return that country which matches this search term, if it has at least some part of it. So if it includes at least some part of it. So if we have France, and if I write just FR, we should get France. And as you can see, and then as you can see here, we have region. So if a region is selected, show only countries from that region. If no region is selected, show all countries. So this is what this line is for. Okay, so now let's take this filtered countries variable and let's replace this countries with this filtered countries. So let's save it, and now I will refresh the page. And now let's first of all try filter by region. Here I will say Europe. As you can see, we have countries from Europe. Now if I say Americas, we have countries from Americas. Okay, now I will try to search for a country using this search. So as you can see here, I type for Canada and I have Dominican Republic and Canada. Okay, but if I remove this from Americas to Africa, for example, we have this. And if I remove, and if I say filter by region, as you can see, we have all countries which contain my search, which is can, as you can see. So this is how it works. Okay, so let's remove it. Great. Okay guys, so now for example, when we click a certain country, we need to show country details. So let's work with country details page. Okay, so here first of all, let's say that we want to get access to the name. So let's say to the name using use params hook. So it is a hook which comes from React Router DOM, and we needed to get country name from URL. Then we can store country. So let's say we can store country data. For that, we can create a new state, and let's say country, set country, and by default, it will be null. So let's import use state from React. Okay, so we want to fetch country details when route param changes. Okay, so here let's say that we want to have use effect hook, and here let's say that it should depend on the name, so it will rerun if the name changes. Okay, and when will it change? When we click another country, right? Okay, and here we need to import Axios. So here let's just remove this use, and we need to import Axios from Axios to be able to make that request. Here let's see Axios.get, and here we need to provide the correct URL, and the URL will look like this. So let's say that we want to work only with these fields. Okay, so this is how our API call will look like for full data. And then once we get that data, let's say then we want to say set country to be the data that we will get from this response, and it will be like first matching country. So that's why we have response.data at 0. And in case of some errors, we can log any errors. Okay, so this is how it's gonna look like. And then, as you can see, it will take some time. And while it is being loaded, we can show some loading. So we can say if country is null, we can return this div. But instead of this just text, we can say that here, first of all, to this div, let's say that it will be flex and justify will be center and margin horizontally will be 10. Oops, here let's say 10. And instead of this text, let's say that we want to have a span. And to this span, we can say that it will be loading. It is a class from DaisyUI. Then loading type will be spinner and loading size will be large. Here, let's say loading. So if we hover over, as you can see, it is coming from DaisyUI. And we do it so that it will be right in the center. Okay, so let's save it. And it looks like we have an error because we need to import use effect. Okay, as you can see, we have this loading. And here, actually, we need to use backticks. Okay, we need to use backticks. So that's why name wasn't blue. So let's save this file again. And now let's refresh the page. As you can see, now we have country details. Otherwise, we saw that loading. Okay, so now we have a particular country's data. We can display it. So first of all, let's say that this div will be our container. So let's say that it will be container and we want to center it. So let's say mx to be auto and we can give some padding, which will be 4. Then here we can have a link to go back. So let's say that we will have a link. Oops. Let's say that link from React Router DOM. And here we can say back. And I will add this icon. So I will add this icon and this link should lead to the home page. And we can give some styles to it. Let's say that it will be button and we can give some outline. So for that we can say button dash outline and some margin bottom, which will be 6. Okay. This is how it looks. It looks really nice. Let's go back. Okay. Now let's open, for example, this country. Okay. Now let's open, for example, this country. Okay, yeah, the experience is very nice. So under this link, we can create another div where we want to show country data. And first of all, to this div, let's say that it will be flex. Flex direction will be column. And on medium screens and higher flex direction will be row. Then we can give some gap, which will be 10. And items will be started. So here we want to show flag image. For that, let's say image. And here we can say country.flag.svg. And actually, let's say that we want to display country's data. So let's say console log. So we want to log country data. So let's save this file. And we have an error. Let's find out. We have cannot read properties of undefined reading SVG. Because here we need to say flags, I believe. Okay, so let's open it. So this is how it looks. We have capital, currencies, then flags, languages, name, population, region, and sub-region. So this is the data that we need to display. Okay, so we have our image. For the alternative option, we can show country.name.common and let's give some styles. Let's say that width will be full and on medium screens and higher width will be 50%. So we can say that width will be 50%. It will be rounded, large, and we can give some shadow, which will be large. Okay. Then under this image, we can create another div. And here we want to have h1 tag. And here we want to show country name. So let's say country.name.common. And we can give some styles. Let's say that it will be for Excel. Font will be bold. And margin bottom will be 4. under this h1, we can create another div and we can show some list of details. Since it will be a list, let's say that we want to give some space, which will be 2 vertically. And here, let's say that we want to have a p tag. And here we also want to use a strong tag. And here, let's say official name. And here, let's say that we will have a colon. And after this strong tag, let's say country.name.official. Then the same should be done for population. So we can accept it. The same should be done for region and subregion. Okay, so let's save it. Okay, it looks nice. Then there are some countries that have several capitals. Okay, we can also do it. So let's say capital. And in this case, we need to do the following. So if country has several capitals, we can say join them using comma. Okay, so if a country has several capitals, but Slovakia has one capital. Okay, and then we need to work with languages and currencies. Okay, and the next will be languages. So here, let's say that we want to have languages. Okay, but when it comes to languages, country.languages is an object. So object.values gets all language names and joins them. So it will turn them into a readable list. Okay, so here we can have languages, but if we don't have languages, we can say no data available, for example. Okay, so let's save this file. And as you can see, this country has one language. Okay, and then the same should be done for currencies. So let's say country, here let's say currencies, right? Then when it comes to currencies, country.currencies is an object of objects. So object.values gets each currency object, and then we need to map. So let's say dot map, and also we need to join. And if we don't have any currency, we can show no data available. So let's save this file. And when it comes to currencies, we have euro. Some countries have several currencies. Okay, so now to check that, we can go back and let's search for Zimbabwe. I believe it has, well, at least it has a lot of languages. Okay, so it has a lot of languages, and we can search for Eswatini. And as you can see, it has 2 languages and 2 currencies. So that's why here we have object.values. Okay, that's it for our country details component. Now let's go back, and here we are. So one thing you may have noticed is that, for example, let's say that I will choose Europe, then let's say that I will go to Netherlands, and if I click back, as you can see, the region is gone. And the same will be for search term. So if, for example, I will write something like this, then if I go to this country, and then if I click back, as you can see, the search term is gone. But I think that this behavior isn't quite good, so we can save this filter and search term in local storage. So for that, let's do the following. Let's go to home.jsx component, and here let's say that we want to save filters and search term in local storage. For that, we can use effect hook. Okay, and here let's say that the dependency array should depend on search term and region. So it will run whenever either changes. Okay, and here let's say that we want to say local storage dot set item region will be region. So we want to save region filter, and the same for our search term. Okay, and now when it comes to these states, we need to make some changes. Let's say that search term will be equal to use state local storage dot get item, which will be equal to search term or an empty string, and the same for region. Okay, so let's save this file and try one more time. Now I will open it in bigger screen. So now let's say that I want to go to Europe, for example. Then let's go to Austria. Then if I click back, as you can see, the region is still Europe. Okay. If I go to Oceania, then if I click Nauru, and if I click back, the region is still the same. Okay. Now, if I try to type something here, let's say new, let's type these letters, for example. Then if I click to this country, then if I come back, the search term is still here. Okay, even if I refresh the page, they are still here. That is really great, guys. I think that this behavior is much better than the one that we saw before. Okay, so now there is one more behavior that may look annoying, I would say. So let's say that now we scroll down. Okay, now let's say that I want to open United Kingdom. Let's click details. Okay, we see everything is fine. But now if I click back, as you can see, I am at the very top, and then I need to scroll down again to be where I was before I clicked this country. So after I click back, I want to be where I was, okay, not at the top. So to fix this behavior, we can do the following. Okay, so for that, let's go back to country details. I mean, we need to go to CountryCard component. Okay, and here we need to do the following. First of all, we need to create a function, and in that function, we will implement functionality to be able to save current scroll position and page path to be able to restore it later. Okay, so here let's say that we want to have a function, let's say handle click. Okay, and here let's say that we want to use session storage. So let's say session storage dot set item. And why we want to use session storage? Because session storage is used to temporarily save the scroll position. It keeps the data while the tab is open, but clears it when the tab is closed. So that way the scroll isn't lost when navigating between pages, but it also doesn't stay forever like local storage. So we use session storage to save temporary page data like scroll position just for the current session. Okay, so that's why we want to use session storage. I think that it is clear to you now. And then let's say set item, and for the name, let's say home scroll. And then we need to have scroll position. For that, we need to say string. We need to have string because string converts that number to text, because session storage can only store strings. So here let's say window.scroll y, and it gives the current vertical scroll position. Otherwise, let's make it to be 0. So if current vertical scroll position isn't available or undefined, we can use 0 instead. Okay, and then we need to save path. But first of all, here let's say that we want to create a variable called location will be equal to use location hook that comes from React Router DOM. Okay, and now we can say session storage dot set item, and here let's say home path, and for the value let's say location dot path name. Okay, so now we need to use this function when we click this button. So let's see, on click, we want to have this function. Okay, so let's save it. And now inside home.jsx, we need to do the following. First of all, we can remove this lock. Okay, and let's say that we want to restore scroll position when user comes back from details page. For that, we need to use useEffect hook. Okay, and this useEffect should run. It runs once before loading when countries is empty, and again right after the countries are fetched. So the scroll restoration happens only when countries are available. So that's why here we need to use countries.length. Even though it runs twice, the real action, which is scroll restoration, only works meaningfully after countries are loaded, because before that there is nothing to scroll yet. So here let's say that we want to read saved scroll value. So let's say const saved will be equal to session storage dot get item. Oops, let's say get item, and the name was home scroll. Okay, and if scroll position exists, we need to check. So let's see, if saved isn't equal to null, it means that scroll position exists. We can wait until layout is ready. So for that, we can use a function called request animation frame. So we need to wait until layout is ready. Okay, and then let's say that we want to scroll to previous position. So let's say window.scroll scroll to, then the first argument is for horizontal position, and we don't need to change horizontal position. so we can leave it as 0. And then we need to parse that string back to a number. So let's say saved 10. Okay, we need to convert a string to an integer, and otherwise, if it isn't provided, we can say 0, so it will be back on top. Okay, so here 0 is the first argument, which is responsible for horizontal position, and we don't need to change any horizontal position. We only want to work with vertical position. And here we say parse int, so we just want to convert string back to an integer. Then we just want to work only with vertical position, and for that we just need to convert a string back into a number. And if we don't have this number, we can say that it will be 0. Okay, and then we need to clear stored scroll. For that, let's say session storage dot remove item home scroll, and we need to remove home path. Okay, so let's say that it will be path, and let's actually check it here. And here we also need to say path. Okay, so let's save it here, and let's save it right here. So again, here we just read saved scroll value, then we check if scroll position exists, then we wait until layout is ready, then we say window scroll to. The first one is for horizontal position, we don't need it at all, we only are interested in vertical position. So here we say that we want to convert a string to a number, okay, using this function. And then if we don't have this number, we just say make it to be 0. And then we remove items from session storage. And then we just clear stored scroll and stored path. Okay, so let's check it. Okay, let's check it. Let's say that I want to open, for example, this country. Let's click details. And now if I click back, as you can see, I am where I was. That is really great, guys. Now let's check it one more time. Let's say that I want to open Turkey. Let's click back, and I am where I was. That is really great, guys. Okay, guys, there are two more things that I would like to draw your attention to. So the first thing is that before I used request animation frame to restore the scroll position. It worked most of the time, but sometimes it failed because the page layout wasn't fully ready yet. So the countries list wasn't rendered when the scroll was applied, and the result is that scroll restoration worked inconsistently. Sometimes you would end up at the top instead of your previous position. So instead of relying on request animation frame, I now use a short set timeout delay around 50 milliseconds. And this small delay gives React time to render all the country cards and update the layout before I restore the scroll. And as you can see, here I have a variable called scroll y. Here I say that I specifically want to work with vertical position, so that's why here I have top, which is equal to scroll y, and I have already mentioned these values. So I take this scroll y variable and say that top will be equal to this variable, and then when it comes to behavior, I set it to be smooth, and now I will show you how it's gonna look like. So basically that's it. Now it's much more reliable even when the data loads asynchronously. The scroll position always gets restored correctly. So the main idea is that request animation frame restores the scroll too early, while set timeout gives React enough time to render before scrolling. That's why this approach works consistently. So I saved this file, and now let's test it. So now I will say filter by region. And let's go to the bottom. Let's, for example, open this one. Let's click back. And as you can see, we have this experience. We see this transition from top to our previous position. That is great, I think. So I think that this behavior is much better. Okay, so that's why I did that. Okay, and the second thing that I would like to draw your attention to is that inside CountryCard component, I said that our images will be, height will be 44, width will be full, but at the same time, I set object contain So the reason I did it is because previously when we wrote height to be 44 and width to be full, it simply sets the size of the image container and the height becomes fixed at 176 pixels. And the width stretches to fill the entire card. However, what actually happens to the image inside that box depends on the object property. So if we don't specify anything, the browser uses object fill by default, which means the image will stretch to completely fill its box. This often can cause distortion. Some flags become stretched vertically or squished horizontally because different countries have flags with very different proportions. So by adding object contain, the browser scales each image so that it fits inside the box without changing its proportions. It means that every flag keeps its correct shape, and if the proportions don't match perfectly, there will simply be some empty space around the edges, and it gives a much more consistent and clean result. So that's why I set object to be contained. I believe that it is perfect for flags or logos, where preserving the aspect ratio matters, while object cover is better for background photos that can be slightly cropped. And in this case, object contain makes all flags look uniform in height, clear and undistorted. So as you can see, now our flags look consistent and they keep their proportions. So that's it, guys. If you find this video helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel if you haven't done it yet. Thank you, I really appreciate it.